The jar of a ringing telephone shatters the quiet evening inside the dispatch center on September 21, 2009. The operator answers the call, connecting to a sprawling mansion tucked behind the imposing iron gates of Isleworth, Florida. A man's voice comes through the receiver, heavy and devoid of panic. He repeats an unimaginable sentence 5 distinct times. "I just shot my wife." The caller, Bob Ward, pauses, letting the silence stretch across the line before adding she is dead. "She is done. I am sorry." Flashing red and blue lights wash over the immaculate landscaping of the estate. Officers cross the grand threshold and navigate the cavernous home, moving up the sweeping staircase toward the master bedroom. There, they find 55-year-old Diane Ward lifeless on the floor, struck by a single fatal impact from a firearm. Downstairs, her husband paces the polished hardwood floors wearing a simple bathrobe. The pristine illusion of an elite millionaire lifestyle shatters against the grim reality lying upstairs. Isleworth sits nestled among interconnected lakes in central Florida, shielded from the outside world by high walls and private security patrols. Towering oak trees draped in Spanish moss line the immaculate roads leading to palatial estates. Professional athletes, corporate titans, and international celebrities call this exclusive enclave home. Behind the heavy mahogany doors of a multi-million-dollar mansion on a quiet street live Diane and Bob Ward. Diane thrived in this environment of immense privilege and structured perfection. She spent her mornings tending to the expansive floral arrangements in her folio, curating the aesthetic of a home designed to impress guests. Her routine involved relaxing by the pristine backyard pool, reading thick novels, and pouring glasses of fine imported wine. She raised 2 daughters, securing their futures with elite private education and lavish vacations. Friends viewed her as a devoted mother and a radiant hostess who anchored her family with grace. To the outside observer, Diane possessed everything a person could desire. Living a modern fairy tale, the sprawling estate provided a physical barrier against the harsh realities of the world. Bob Ward matched his surroundings, projecting the image of a fearless and invincible real estate tycoon. He commanded a company named Land Resource, developing luxury residential communities across the southeast United States. He poured his vast earnings into the Isleworth mansion, creating a fortress of opulence. The residence featured a grand entryway with sweeping staircases leading to a secluded second-floor master suite. The ground floor boasted a vast open-concept living area connecting to a sunlit kitchen and a shaded outdoor patio. This patio overlooked a manicured lawn and the calm waters of the adjacent lake, offering the ultimate setting for elite evening gatherings. Bob filled the driveway with expensive sports cars and hosted elaborate parties to showcase his success to the local high society. Neighbors perceived the Wards as a unified, unshakable couple living out the peak of the American dream. The pair maintained a meticulous image, ensuring no crack in their polished armor showed in public. Their social calendar overflowed with charity galas and exclusive club dinners. Everyone believed the Wards held absolute control over their prosperous destiny. The global economic collapse of the year 2008 struck the real estate market with devastating force. Bob watched his empire crumble as credit lines vanished and property values plummeted. Land Resource filed for bankruptcy, leaving behind tens of millions of dollars in corporate debt and a trail of furious creditors. Civil litigation engulfed Bob, threatening to strip away every asset he spent decades accumulating behind the pristine facade of their Isleworth home. The suffocating weight of total financial ruin crushed the Wards. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on the mansion, placing an invisible ticking clock on their luxurious lifestyle. Diane faced the terrifying prospect of losing her sanctuary, her social standing, and her sheltered existence. The mahogany doors now trapped a thick, toxic atmosphere of anxiety and deep despair. Unpaid bills piled up on the heavy oak desk in Bob's study, serving as constant reminders of their impending public humiliation. The couple began isolating themselves, spending long evenings in separate corners of the massive, echoing house. The pressure cooker of impending poverty primed the household for a tragic breaking point. The fragile illusion of the Ward family shatters on the humid night of September 21. The vast Isleworth mansion stands quiet as evening falls, shadows stretching across the manicured lawns. Inside, the profound stress of their imminent foreclosure reaches a critical boiling point. According to the statements Bob Ward provided to law enforcement, Diane consumed significant amounts of alcohol and prescription antidepressants throughout the day. He claimed the intoxicating mixture amplified her despair over their shattered finances and ruined social standing. Bob told investigators he retired to the dark master bedroom on the second floor, seeking refuge from the tension. He stated that Diane entered the room moments later, holding a loaded .357 Magnum revolver. In his initial narrative, he insisted his wife threatened to end her own life in an act of absolute desperation. Bob described a chaotic scene unfolding in the pitch-black room. He claimed he lunged from the bed, desperate to pry the heavy metal weapon from her hands. Bob detailed a frantic blind wrestling match over the lethal firearm in the unlit bedroom. He insisted they tangled together, grappling for control of the steel frame as panic consumed the space. During this desperate physical struggle, Bob claimed the weapon discharged without warning. A deafening crack echoed off the high vaulted ceilings of the second floor. Bob stated the heavy bullet struck Diane, dropping her to the plush carpet. He framed the event as an unforeseeable tragedy, born of a wife's deep depression and a husband's failed rescue attempt. He portrayed himself as a grieving survivor, caught in a chaotic split-second disaster. First responders listening to this account noted his calm demeanor and his immaculate pacing in a clean bathrobe. Law enforcement protocol dictates a rigorous verification of any narrative involving a fatal weapon discharge. Detectives began mapping the physical space, comparing Bob S. words against the silent testimony of the room. The story of a spontaneous, dark bedroom struggle formed the absolute core of his defense. Investigators expanding their search beyond the second floor uncovered glaring contradictions to the grieving husband's tale. Crime scene technicians walked down the sweeping staircase and moved out to the ground floor patio. The soft glow of exterior lights illuminated a shattered wine glass scattered across the stone pavers. A dark, significant stain marred the patio surface, marking the site of an earlier forceful disturbance. This broken glass indicated a heated, aggressive confrontation occurred downstairs hours before any supposed struggle in the master suite upstairs. The physical remnants on the patio destroyed the timeline of a sudden, spontaneous confrontation initiated in the dark bedroom. The shattered fragments told the story of an escalating domestic fight, driven by rage rather than a tragic attempt at self-harm. Detectives recognized that the peaceful narrative Bob constructed clashed with the scattered debris outside. This striking discrepancy transformed a supposed domestic accident into a suspicious death investigation. The broken wine glass on the patio became the undeniable focal point for the impending legal battle. The unyielding physical evidence prepared to challenge the word of a fallen millionaire. Detectives secure the sprawling estate as the heavy Florida heat clings to the night air on September 21. Law enforcement officers establish a strict perimeter around the mansion to preserve the integrity of the scene. They begin mapping the exact physical geography between the upstairs master suite and the ground floor living spaces. The outdoor terrace sits 40 feet below the primary bedroom, paved in smooth stone and surrounded by lush tropical foliage. Crime scene technicians follow a trail of subtle disturbances leading out to this shaded patio. The harsh glare of police flashlights cuts through the darkness, illuminating a shattered crystal wine glass resting on the ground. Sharp fragments of glass lie scattered across the expensive pavers, indicating a sudden violent impact. A dark purple liquid remains pooled on the stones, seeping into the grout lines between the tiles. The physical state of the patio suggests an intense confrontation occurred outside in the humid night air. This shattered glass contradicts the narrative of a peaceful evening interrupted by a sudden tragedy in the bedroom. Investigators place numbered yellow markers next to each shard, documenting the exact radius of the debris field. The pristine illusion of the millionaire household cracks under the weight of this hidden, chaotic confrontation. The patio evidence establishes a definitive starting point for the escalating domestic dispute. Law enforcement officers turn their focused attention back to Bob Ward inside the mansion. The former real estate mogul remains pacing the polished hardwood floors in his pristine white bathrobe. Detectives observe his calm demeanor, noting the distinct lack of physical exhaustion or panic in his voice. Crime scene technicians instruct him to hand over the specific clothing he wore prior to donning the robe. Detectives inspect the collared shirt he surrenders to the evidence collection team. They discover a distinct dark purple stain splashed across the back fabric of the garment. This specific chemical marker connects the defendant to the aggressive physical confrontation on the downstairs patio. A man locked in a tragic, spontaneous struggle in a dark upstairs bedroom would not carry fresh wine stains on his back. The physical reality of the stained shirt dismantles the fragile narrative of a sudden, unforeseeable event. The evidence proves the husband stood near the shattering glass long before the fatal encounter in the master suite. Investigators document the exact dimensions of the splatter to build a chronological map of dispute. The domestic fight moved from the outdoor terrace through the grand living room and up the sweeping staircase. The shattered glass and the stained shirt transform a supposed domestic accident into a grave criminal investigation. The investigation shifts from the luxurious Isleworth mansion to the sterile, cold environment of the county morgue on September 22. The chief medical examiner begins a meticulous examination of Diane Ward. Forensic specialists measure the exact trajectory and physical characteristics of the fatal wound on her face. They search the surrounding skin tissue for any signs of stippling. Stippling consists of distinct microscopic burns and embedded unburned powder left behind when a firearm discharges at extreme close range. The examiner uses a magnifying lens to inspect the impact site under intense bright surgical lights. The medical professional documents an absolute, undeniable lack of these gunpowder burns on her face. This distinct absence of powder tattooing provides a definitive forensic measurement for the investigating detectives. The forensic pathologist determines the weapon discharged from a distance of at least 18 inches away from the victim. A firearm held 18 inches away renders a close quarters hand-to-hand struggle over the barrel a physical impossibility. The scientific data proves Diane did not hold the gun against herself, nor did she pull the barrel toward her face. The physical dimensions of the human arm and the length of the weapon make a close struggle incompatible with the 18-inch gap. This crucial autopsy finding severs the final thread of the accidental discharge defense. Detectives turn their intense focus to the .357 Magnum revolver recovered from the bedroom floor. The heavy steel weapon travels to the State Crime Laboratory for exhaustive mechanical testing. Firearms experts secure the gun in a vise to test the internal mechanical action of the firing system. They attach a specialized digital scale to measure the exact trigger pull weight required to drop the hammer. The double action mechanism of this specific revolver demands deliberate, intense pressure from the user's finger. The digital readout confirms the trigger requires over 12 pounds of continuous force to complete the firing cycle. A chaotic bump in the dark could never engage the heavy firing pin of this robust weapon. The physical design of the revolver requires an intentional, forceful, and sustained squeeze. Investigators conclude the weapon did not simply slip or go off during a frantic grappling match. The mechanical truth of the gun aligns with the 18-inch distance established by the medical examiner. The combined forensic evidence paints a terrifying picture of a man standing over his wife, aiming from a distance. The hidden horror of the ward's financial ruin had culminated in a calculated, decisive squeeze of a heavy trigger. The undeniable facts gathered by the crime lab provide the state with the ammunition needed to file formal charges. Armed with the unyielding forensic data, authorities place Bob Ward under formal arrest for the fatal shooting. The fallen tycoon leverages his remaining financial connections to secure a team of elite defense attorneys. The defense strategy relies on weaponizing the initial chaos of the crime scene response. They study the police dispatch logs to find procedural vulnerabilities in the early hours of the investigation. The legal team files motions arguing that first responders contaminated the master bedroom upon their initial arrival. They claim the responding paramedics and patrol officers moved crucial objects, destroying the structural integrity of the evidence. The attorneys build a parallel narrative focusing on the psychological deterioration of Diane Ward. They present a dark picture of a woman driven to severe unpredictability by crushing financial ruin and prescription medications. Their aggressive legal filings frame her as a deeply depressed individual capable of sudden, erratic, and dangerous actions in the dark. This tactical maneuver attempts to shift the scrutiny away from the defendant and place the burden of blame on the deceased victim. Detectives watch in profound frustration as the defense attempts to use Diane's personal suffering as a legal shield for her husband. The judicial system processes these complex pretrial motions, setting the stage for a high-stakes courtroom battle. The court officially schedules the trial for the latter half of the year 2011. The trial commences in an Orlando courtroom packed with investigative reporters and curious local spectators. State prosecutors open their case by leading the jury through the physical geography of the Isleworth mansion. They present vivid, high-resolution photographs of the patio, emphasizing the shattered glass and the purple stain on the defendant's shirt. The state calls the chief medical examiner to the witness stand to detail the crucial distance of the firearm. The expert explains the 18-inch gap between the barrel and the victim, dismantling the story of a close physical struggle. The prosecution introduces the heavy .357 Magnum to the jury box, allowing the panel to see its imposing size. The lead prosecutor demonstrates the intense mechanical force required to pull the heavy trigger back to the firing position. This striking visual demonstration proves the weapon demanded clear intent rather than a clumsy accidental bump in the dark. The defense attorneys counter by amplifying their theory of police incompetence and a botched first response. They argue the lack of absolute perfection in the crime scene preservation introduces reasonable doubt into the minds of the jurors. The jury absorbs weeks of dense technical testimony, balancing the forensic facts against the aggressive claims of the defense. The panel retreats to the isolated deliberation room, spending hours weighing the complex web of evidence. They return to the courtroom with a definitive verdict, convicting Bob Ward on serious criminal charges for the intentional taking of a life. The presiding judge orders the former millionaire to serve 30 years behind the thick concrete walls of a state penitentiary. The heavy steel prison doors lock behind Bob Ward, but his remaining financial resources fund an ongoing legal strategy. His newly hired appellate attorneys begin a comprehensive audit of the trial transcripts from the 2011 proceedings. The legal team spends the next 4 years filing sequential motions in the Florida State Appellate Courts. They review every recorded word spoken by the prosecution, searching for any procedural error to invalidate the conviction. The defense attorneys isolate a critical constitutional mistake made during the closing arguments of the original trial. The state prosecutors had referenced the invocation of Bob O.S. right to remain silent during his initial police interrogation. The United States Constitution forbids the government from using a defendant's silence as proof of guilt to a jury. The original defense attorneys failed to raise a formal objection to this improper statement during the trial. This specific failure to object constitutes ineffective assistance of counsel under established appellate law. The appellate court judges convene to review this glaring systemic failure in the state's presentation of the case. The judicial panel issues a binding written ruling in February of the year 2016. The judges declare the original trial compromised by the unconstitutional reference to the defendant's silence. They overturn the entire conviction, striking the guilty verdict from the official judicial record. The stroke of a judge's pen negates the meticulous detective work, granting the former tycoon a new trial and restarting the legal nightmare. The dense legal saga resumes in the early months of the year 2018. The heavy wooden double doors of the Orange County Courthouse swing open to reveal a stark, imposing judicial theater. High vaulted ceilings echo with the shuffling of legal documents as the prosecution team prepares an impenetrable presentation. The state prosecutors arrange thick binders of forensic evidence across the polished oak tables facing the jury box. Bob Ward takes his seat at the defense table, his hair now gray, yet his posture still projecting the fierce pride of a former corporate titan. The physical space between the wealthy defendant and the impartial jury reflects a vast, unbridgeable divide. Law enforcement officials stand guard near the heavy exits, ensuring strict order within the gallery. The prosecution intends to eliminate the prior procedural mistakes that allowed the fallen millionaire a second chance at freedom. They rebuild the timeline of the fatal night with absolute precision. The state prepares to strike with a refined, devastating array of physical facts. The renewed battle focuses entirely on the silent, unyielding testimony of the crime scene debris. The prosecuting attorneys guide the jurors back to the physical geography of the Isleworth Mansion patio. They project high-resolution crime scene photographs onto a large digital screen positioned in front of the jury box. The prosecutors move past the shattered glass scattered across the stone pavers to highlight a previously overlooked detail. Beside the chaotic debris field, a second, pristine wine glass rests on a small wrought iron side table. This untouched crystal goblet stands upright, casting a long shadow under the flash of the police cameras. The physical state of this undisturbed glass shatters the defense narrative of a mutual, chaotic struggle escalating out of control. The state argues this perfect glass proves Bob acted as the sole aggressor during the heated confrontation downstairs. The lack of disturbance on the side table demonstrates a calculated, targeted strike rather than a frantic domestic scuffle. A blind wrestling match would have scattered every fragile object across the narrow patio space. The untouched goblet serves as a silent, powerful witness to the extreme power imbalance of the altercation. The state anchors their aggressive timeline on this single piece of immaculate evidence. The trial shifts away from the patio and enters the sterile, microscopic world of forensic chemical analysis. The state calls a specialized trace evidence technician to the witness stand to dissect the discharge mechanics of a heavy firearm. The expert explains how the intense ignition of the primer creates a microscopic cloud of vaporized lead, barium, and antimony. This invisible chemical cloud coats the hands and clothing of anyone holding or reaching for a discharging weapon. The prosecution projects the official laboratory analysis of the hands of Diane Ward onto the large screen. The forensic report confirms an absolute, undeniable void of any chemical discharge markers on her skin or clothing. If the victim had grasped the barrel of the .357 Magnum during a desperate struggle, the chemical residue would coat her palms. The complete absence of these elements proves Diane never laid a finger on the heavy steel revolver. This scientific absolute destroys the tale of a husband fighting to save his depressed wife. The cold data leaves no room for alternative theories or emotional manipulation. The scientific truth isolates the defendant as the sole operator of the lethal mechanism. The heavy burden of the physical evidence falls squarely onto the shoulders of the former real estate tycoon. Prosecutors weave the suffocating pressure of total financial ruin into the final psychological profile of the defendant. They present the extensive bankruptcy filings of Land Resource, mapping the exact dates of the financial collapse to the fatal night. The state demonstrates that Bob Ward faced imminent public humiliation, the loss of his luxurious sanctuary, and total social erasure. They argue the fallen tycoon chose to inflict a permanent end rather than face his elite peers as a ruined, destitute failure. The defense team counters with a frantic emotional plea, attempting to paint their client as a loving husband caught in a nightmare. They lean into the portrayal of Diane as an unstable, medicated woman prone to erratic behavior. This desperate tactic fails to overcome the rigid boundaries of the forensic science and the patio timeline. The closing arguments conclude, leaving a heavy silence hanging over the expansive courtroom. The 12 impartial citizens retreat to the secluded deliberation room to weigh the immense volume of facts. They spend hours separating the emotional noise from the stark physical realities documented by crime scene technicians. The jurors return to their seats in the gallery, clutching a finalized, irrevocable decision. The terrifying realization washes over the defendant that his vast financial resources could not alter the cold physical data left in his own bedroom. The court clerk accepts the folded document from the jury foreperson and reads the binding decision into the silent room. The jury convicts Bob Ward of manslaughter, rejecting his fabricated narrative of an unforeseeable domestic accident. The heavy wooden gavel strikes the sounding board, cementing the legal doom of the real estate developer. The presiding judge addresses the defendant, highlighting the tragic, irreversible consequences of his violent actions. The court imposes a formidable penalty of 30 years in the custody of the Florida State prison system. Given the advanced age of the former millionaire, this 3-decade mandate functions as a permanent life sentence. The judge details how the rigid sentencing guidelines offer no leniency for individuals who attempt to manipulate physical evidence. Law enforcement officers secure the convicted man in heavy steel handcuffs, stripping away his final shreds of elite dignity. The strict protocol of the judicial system ensures the wealthy perpetrator faces the exact same harsh reality as any common criminal. The conclusive verdict brings a heavy measure of moral justice to the memory of Diane Ward. The undeniable facts of the investigation triumph over the expensive, calculated smokescreens of the defense. The fatal impact in the master bedroom leaves behind a fractured and sorrowful family dynamic. Diane's 2 adult daughters, Sarah and Mallory, step forward into the intense media spotlight during the final sentencing phase. They refuse to abandon their disgraced father, choosing to support the man responsible for the tragic absence of their mother. The sisters present a worn handwritten document to the presiding judge during the emotional final hearing. They assert this specific piece of paper represents a final farewell letter penned by their mother prior to the fatal night. An independent forensic handwriting expert verifies the penmanship, confirming the distressed words belong to Diane. The contents of this letter speak to her immense internal suffering and the crushing weight of their financial collapse. The daughters attempt to use this verified document to secure judicial leniency for their convicted father. The court acknowledges the profound tragedy of the letter but refuses to let the emotional weight override the rigid forensic data of the shooting. The legal system recognizes that deep despair does not grant a spouse the authority to act as an executioner. The daughters' unyielding loyalty to their father adds a complex, agonizing layer of psychological torment to the family's shattered legacy. The siblings leave the courtroom forced to navigate the remainder of their lives in the shadow of this immense public tragedy. The sprawling Isleworth mansion faces an unforgiving financial reality. The heavy mahogany doors remain locked as the banking institution seized the property through foreclosure proceedings. Real estate agents strip the palatial residence of its custom furnishings, erasing all physical traces of the Ward family from the halls. The bank places the massive fortress on the open market, seeking buyers willing to inhabit a space marked by extreme domestic tragedy. The property sells to anonymous investors, settling a minuscule fraction of the massive corporate debts left behind by Land Resource. The exclusive gated enclave shared with international professional athletes and corporate titans closes ranks and moves forward. The immaculate neighborhood erases the disgraced real estate tycoon from its prestigious history, leaving no monument to his former empire. The physical barrier that once shielded Diane from the harsh outside world now belongs to strangers who know nothing of her daily routines. The liquidation of the estate serves as a stark physical manifestation of the complete financial collapse that triggered the fatal dispute. The Grand Mansion transforms from a symbol of ultimate power into a grim landmark of greed and profound loss. The quiet waters of the adjacent lake continue to ripple, indifferent to the permanent shattering of a modern fairy tale. State transport vehicles carry Bob Ward far away from the manicured lawns of Central Florida and deep into the harsh concrete reality of the penal system. He resides at the Zephyrhills Correctional Institution, operating under strict, unyielding state supervision. His rigid daily routine now consists of numbered, rough uniforms, regulated meals, and the deafening noise of the crowded cell blocks. The loss of autonomy stands in sharp, punishing contrast to his former life of private jets, imported wines, and limitless financial freedom. The Department of Corrections lists his anticipated release date in the year 2038. This distant horizon guarantees the former titan of industry will fade into obscurity behind heavy steel bars and razor wire. The meticulous work of the crime scene technicians ensured that no amount of corporate wealth could suppress the fundamental truth of the forensic data. The flawless documentation of a shattered wine glass and a microscopic absence of primer residue secured a measure of peace for the victim. Diane Ward lost her life in a terrifying moment of domestic violence, but the unyielding justice system ensured her story did not end in a fabricated cover-up. The decade-long saga concludes as a dark, permanent warning to those who believe wealth can bend reality. The cold concrete cell at Zephyrhills marks the final bleak destination for a man destroyed by immense greed, fractured pride, and absolute ruin.